The ship's engines hummed quietly as it drifted through the alien skyport. Towering spires of glass and crystal stretched up into the swirling purple clouds, reflecting the artificial sunlight in sharp, jagged patterns. Lieutenant Cale Anders stood at the edge of the docking platform, his eyes scanning the scene before him. He had seen many alien worlds, but this one felt different. Cold. Efficient and suspicious. The city below was alive with motion. Sleek vehicles zipped along invisible tracks, and beings of various shapes and sizes moved with coordinated precision. The aliens here were tall and graceful, with elongated limbs and faces that were simultaneously beautiful and intimidating. They spoke in a language Cale did not understand, yet there was an underlying rhythm to it, as if their words carried weight beyond the literal meaning. Cale adjusted the straps of his armor. It was light, flexible, and human-designed, meant for agility rather than brute force. He had chosen simplicity over ostentation. This wasn't the time for theatrics. His mission was delicate: train these alien soldiers in human combat techniques while observing the subtle politics of their empire. And perhaps, if he played his cards right, leave an impression that would resonate far beyond the training grounds. As he stepped toward the transit lift that would take him to the Royal Training Hall, Cale felt a prickle of awareness along his spine. His instincts, honed through years of survival and combat, told him he was being watched. He had expected it. Humans were considered weak here, an amusing footnote in the galaxy's history. This perception would give him an advantage, but it would also make every misstep dangerous. The lift glided upward silently, and soon he found himself at the top of the crystalline tower. The training hall was vast, a gleaming arena of polished surfaces and mirrored walls. The air vibrated slightly, a subtle hum of technology running beneath the floor and walls. Cale's boots echoed as he walked across the hall, carrying only a few pieces of equipment. From her elevated chamber, Queen Thalira observed him. Her eyes, sharp and penetrating, traced every movement of the human before her. She had heard the rumors about humans, of course, but she had never seen one up close. They were supposed to be fragile, unpredictable, and easily dominated. Yet there was something in Cale's posture, the way he carried himself, that made her pause. He seemed ordinary, yes, but there was an undercurrent of confidence that did not belong to someone so supposedly weak. Cale began to suit up, sliding into the armor with practiced precision. It wrapped around his body, locking into place with quiet clicks and subtle adjustments. The alien soldiers in the hall exchanged quiet murmurs, some sneering, some curious. None of them moved to challenge him, though. He had trained for situations like this, and he had a plan. When Cale finished, he turned slowly. That was when the Queen saw it. The tattoo on his back, partially exposed by the armor's design, shimmered faintly under the artificial light. Its lines and curves formed a symbol ancient and unfamiliar, yet strangely resonant. Queen Thalira froze, her breath caught in her throat. This was no ordinary mark. Cale noticed the change immediately. He could feel it in the shift of the room's energy, the subtle tension that had suddenly thickened the air. He did not panic. He never did. Instead, he gave a faint nod to the soldiers and stepped into the center of the hall, standing tall and relaxed. The aliens watched him with skepticism, testing the limits of their patience. "You think you can teach us?" one of them asked, his voice a mixture of disdain and curiosity. His name, Cale learned later, was Commander Seleth, and he was considered one of the Empire's finest tacticians. Cale smiled faintly. "I don't think." "I know." His voice was calm, measured, carrying an authority that seemed almost alien in itself. The room went quiet. Not one alien moved to interrupt him. "Show us," Seleth demanded. Cale nodded and began. The first exercises were simple, movements designed to test reflexes, speed, and spatial awareness. The aliens executed them efficiently but rigidly, their bodies precise but lacking fluidity. Cale demonstrated the same movements in a human style, agile, adaptive, and unpredictable. He flowed from one position to another seamlessly, exploiting angles and momentum in ways the aliens had not considered. One by one, the alien soldiers attempted to mimic him. Some failed spectacularly. Some succeeded partially. Cale corrected them gently, demonstrating how small adjustments in balance and timing could multiply effectiveness. By the end of the session, there was a tangible shift in the atmosphere. The aliens no longer laughed or sneered. They were beginning to pay attention. Queen Thalira remained still, observing from her chamber. The tattoo on Cale's back had captivated her attention. She had not seen such a symbol in centuries, not in living memory, not even in the most guarded archives. It spoke of warriors who were not merely strong but cunning, adaptable, and relentless. Humans were supposed to be insignificant, yet here was proof, alive and moving, that perhaps they had been underestimated. Kale paused for a moment, sensing eyes on him. Without turning, he spoke softly, more to himself than anyone else. Legends aren't always dead. Enough for today, Kale announced. His voice carried authority without arrogance. The soldiers relaxed, some still exchanging wary glances. Kale moved toward a corner of the hall, removing his gauntlets and examining the wear on his armor. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but he noticed every detail. Discipline and observation were as important as strength. The queen finally spoke, her voice echoing through the chamber, though filtered through layers of etiquette and control. You carry yourself with confidence, yet your people are small, weak. How do you reconcile this disparity? And humans, when necessary, become legends. He removed his armor carefully, tracing the lines of the tattoo in the mirror. It was more than a symbol, it was a history encoded into flesh. A reminder of what humans could be when pushed beyond limits, and a warning to those who underestimated them. Outside, the city of crystal and light continued its rhythm. Aliens passed in perfect synchronization, unaware of the subtle shift occurring in their perception of humanity. Queen Thalira sat alone in her chamber, contemplating the implications of the tattoo. She could not deny the stirrings of something ancient, something powerful awakening within her empire. Kale slept lightly, alert even in rest. His mission had just begun. The first day had been a test, and he had passed it without a single misstep. Tomorrow he would push further, reveal more, and perhaps force the Empire to recognize that humans were not to be underestimated. In the quiet hours, the queen could not tear her gaze from the memory of the tattoo, etched in her mind as clearly as it was on Kale's back. The legends of humanity were no longer distant whispers. They were here, embodied in a single human who moved with the grace, skill, and deadly precision of centuries of evolution. And somewhere deep in her chest, a seed of fear mingled with awe. For the first time in generations, she wondered if her people had misjudged humans entirely. Kale did not dream of victory or conquest. He dreamed of preparation, strategy, and observation. Every movement mattered, every glance, every shadow, every hesitation. He understood humans in a way the aliens did not. He could turn perception into strength, weakness into leverage. And in the coming days, he would demonstrate that power not through arrogance, but through precision. The hall, empty now save for the hum of its technology, seemed to pulse with latent tension. Kale's presence had left a mark, subtle but undeniable. A ripple had passed through the Empire, and whether they realized it or not, the balance had begun to shift. And as the first stars began to blink in the alien sky, one truth was clear. Humans were underestimated, but that underestimation would not last. Not with Kale Anders in their midst. The next morning, Kale arrived at the training hall before the sun had fully risen over the alien city. The crystalline towers reflected the first light, scattering it in sharp patterns across the streets and walkways. The city looked calm from above, orderly, but Kale knew that appearances were often misleading. The empire was strong, but no strength was without flaws. Queen Thalira had already taken her place in the observation chamber. She had not left since yesterday, her mind restless. The tattoo on Kale's back haunted her thoughts. She had seen symbols like it only in the oldest archives, in records that spoke of humans as more than what they seemed. Humans were supposed to be primitive, weak, irrelevant, but Kale's presence contradicted all that. Kale did not acknowledge the queen directly. He moved with quiet confidence among the alien soldiers who were assembling for the day's training. They were taller, their limbs long and precise, but there was a stiffness to their movements, a rigidity that came from generations of perfection in form and technique. They were strong, undeniably, but their strength was predictable. Humans, Kale knew, thrived on unpredictability. Today, he said, his voice calm but commanding, we test not just strength but adaptability. Pay attention. Can you truly teach us something useful? Kale demonstrated a sequence of defensive and offensive maneuvers, shifting angles, using momentum in ways the aliens did not expect. His movements were not faster than theirs, but they were clever, deceptive, and fluid. The soldiers tried to follow, but many stumbled or overextended. Kale moved among them, correcting their posture, their timing, their balance. Do not fight against your own body, he instructed. Work with it, predict where your opponent expects you, then do something else. And now before her, the legend walked in flesh and blood. By midday, the aliens were sweating, their frustration mounting. Kale remained calm, observing each one, correcting, guiding, and sometimes simply demonstrating with quiet confidence. His presence had a strange effect. They could not ignore him, could not dismiss him as weak. Even those who had mocked him yesterday now paused to watch his every movement. During a brief rest, Kale removed his gauntlets and gloves, wiping the sweat from his hands. He glanced at the mirrored walls, noting the soldiers' expressions. Some were cautious, some skeptical, and some intrigued. The queen had not left her chamber, but he could feel her gaze. There was tension there, all mingled with disbelief. Selith approached him cautiously. "You teach well, human, but your strength is not ours. It is different. Do you expect us to follow your methods without question?" "You have power, yes, but power without thought is fragile." Aliens were given multiple opponents, forced to adapt to shifting positions and challenged to react to unexpected changes in terrain and strategy. Many struggled. Their training had taught them discipline, coordination, and efficiency, but not improvisation. Humans excelled where rules were broken, patterns disrupted. Kale moved through the chaos effortlessly. He anticipated moves before they were fully made, sidestepping attacks with subtle adjustments, using opponents' strength against them. One by one, the alien soldiers began to notice a pattern. The human did not rely on brute force alone. He read situations, predicted outcomes, and manipulated the environment to his advantage. Queen Thalira's expression grew harder to read. Her advisors had warned her that humans were unpredictable, but they had also assured her they were insignificant. She realized now that the warning had been an understatement. This human was extraordinary, not because of raw strength, but because of intelligence, observation, and adaptability. A sudden challenge erupted when two of the strongest alien soldiers confronted Kale simultaneously. They attacked in perfect synchronization, assuming his human body could not endure such a combination. Kale did not hesitate. He shifted his weight, redirected their momentum, and moved between them with precision. Within moments, he had disarmed both without causing serious injury, leaving them stunned on the ground. The hall fell silent. Even the other soldiers stopped to watch, their pride wounded but their curiosity ignited. Kale straightened, his breathing steady, and allowed a faint smile. "Strength is only part of the equation," he said simply. "Understanding the battle is the rest." He carried a legacy, one she had thought lost to time. The tattoo on his back was a symbol of warriors who had influenced galactic events in ways no one alive now could fully comprehend. It was a warning and a promise. As training continued, Kale introduced subtle lessons in teamwork and leadership. He paired soldiers with varying skills and strengths, forcing them to adapt to one another rather than relying solely on standardized techniques. Conflicts arose. Frustration flared. Yet Kale guided them with quiet authority, showing them that communication and trust could turn potential failure into success. By the end of the day, the soldiers were exhausted, sweat-streaked, and increasingly respectful. Kale observed them quietly, noting who had potential and who was rigid in thought. His goal was not just to teach. They needed to understand that humans were not predictable, that intelligence and adaptability could rival raw strength. Queen Thalira remained in her chamber, watching silently. She had spent decades observing her empire, studying strategy and understanding war. Yet she felt unease she had not experienced in centuries. The humans were underestimated, yes, but perhaps the greatest mistake was thinking humans were limited. After the soldiers dispersed, Kale remained in the hall, examining the floor and walls, noting patterns and weaknesses in the architecture. His mind worked even in quiet moments, cataloging possibilities, preparing for challenges he did not yet know would come. A voice interrupted him. "You think too much for one so small," said Queen Thalira, stepping from the shadows of her chamber. Kale turned, smiling faintly. "Size is irrelevant," he replied. "History is not measured in centimeters, but in action, endurance, and will. It carries meaning I thought lost. The presence of humans, their ability to adapt and survive, their unpredictable nature, these were lessons that could not be fully conveyed with speech alone." As night fell, the alien city glowed with a soft, ethereal light. Kale returned to his quarters, muscles tired but mind alert. The day had been a success. He had proven that humans were more than appearances, more than rumors. They could teach, adapt, and overcome in ways the aliens had not considered. Queen Thalira watched from her high chamber until the lights of the training hall dimmed. She thought of the tattoo, of the human before her, of the stories buried in forgotten archives. Something had shifted. The Empire had glimpsed a truth it had never acknowledged. Humans were not weak, not irrelevant, and perhaps, if properly understood, capable of changing the balance of power across the galaxy. Kale slept lightly, dreams filled with possibilities, strategies, and contingencies. Every movement, every reaction, every decision mattered. He had planted seeds today, and he would watch them grow. He would test, push, and reveal the strengths humans carried quietly within them. And when the time came, he would show the aliens that underestimation was a dangerous mistake. Somewhere in the Empire, the Queen could not rest either. The tattoo haunted her thoughts, a symbol of legacy and power that humans had carried unnoticed for centuries. She did not yet understand the full meaning, but one thing was certain. The presence of this human, Lieutenant Cale Anders, had changed everything. The Empire had begun to see humans in a new light, not as fragile outsiders, but as clever, adaptable, and formidable. And the Queen, for the first time in decades, wondered if she had misjudged them entirely. Outside, the city's lights reflected in the dark waters below. Life continued, unaware of the subtle shift that had begun in perception, strategy, and understanding. Cale's influence was quiet but undeniable. By the end of tomorrow, he would push further, and the Empire would be forced to recognize the truth. Humans were not ordinary, and they were not to be ignored. The next day, the training hall felt different. Word had spread among the alien soldiers about Cale's skill, though none dared admit it openly. Whispers ran through the ranks like ripples across water, subtle but impossible to ignore. Humans were not supposed to be remarkable, and yet the presence of Cale Anders challenged everything they had been taught. Cale entered the hall quietly, letting the soldiers assemble themselves. His armor gleamed under the artificial light, but it was not the shine of wealth or sophistication. It was practical, functional, designed for movement and endurance. He had spent years perfecting every piece, every adjustment. To him, armor was not decoration. It was an extension of the body, a tool, a partner. Queen Thalira observed from above, her gaze sharp and unwavering. The tattoo on Cale's back had become an obsession. She had spent hours studying it, consulting archives and scholars. Its lines were part of an ancient system, marking a lineage of humans who were warriors, strategists, and survivors. These humans had left subtle influences across galaxies, shaping events behind the scenes. She had always thought these stories exaggerated. Now, Cale stood before her, proof that the legends had a foundation in truth. Cale began with an exercise that seemed simple but was actually complex. He arranged small teams of soldiers to solve a series of challenges, navigating obstacle courses, adapting to shifting terrain, and responding to surprise attacks from multiple directions. On the surface, it looked like training, but beneath it was strategy, observation, and the testing of adaptability. The soldiers struggled. They were efficient in execution, precise in movement, but when rules changed or unexpected conditions arose, they faltered. Cale moved among them calm, correcting errors, guiding, teaching, not with scolding but with demonstration. His approach was methodical, almost surgical. "Predict, adapt, overcome," he said softly, moving past a soldier who had frozen in indecision. A rigid plan fails against unpredictability. Strength without thought is wasted. Some of the younger soldiers even began to smile as they realized their limitations could be overcome. The Queen's attention never wavered. She had always prided herself on understanding tactics and warfare, yet Cale's teaching revealed something she had never fully grasped. Humans were not just strong, they were adaptive. Their strength lay not in uniformity, but in creativity, intelligence, and the ability to exploit what others considered weaknesses. As the training progressed, Cale noticed subtle changes in the soldiers' behavior. Some now hesitated before striking, calculating angles and outcomes instead of relying solely on reflex. Others communicated more efficiently, learning to trust one another in ways their standard drills had never encouraged. Cale smiled faintly. Progress was slow but inevitable. Humans thrived where rules could be bent, and the aliens were learning that lesson by experience, not by words. Midway through the day, a message arrived for the Queen. She read it quickly and stiffened. A neighboring sector had reported a breach, a small but aggressive raid by a rival alien faction. The invaders had underestimated the city's defenses, assuming the humans would be irrelevant and the soldiers capable of handling the threat easily. Cale observed the Queen's reaction, noting the tension in her posture. Without a word, he understood the situation. Humans were not known for raw numbers or overwhelming firepower. They were known for ingenuity and resilience. He could leverage that knowledge. "The breach," Cale said quietly, turning to Selith, "is an opportunity. not just to defend, but to show them what humans can do when underestimated. With the breach still small, there was something in Kale, something ancient, something powerful that demanded trust. Kale moved quickly. He gathered a small team combining human and alien soldiers and devised a plan that was unconventional by alien standards. They would not simply defend the city. They would use the environment, their own agility, and surprise tactics to outmaneuver the attackers. Humans excelled where rules were broken, and Kale intended to exploit every possible advantage. As the invaders advanced, Kale's team set traps, created distractions, and used terrain to divide their enemies. The aliens had trained for precision and numbers, but they had not accounted for ingenuity and unpredictability. Within minutes, the attackers found themselves outmaneuvered, confused by the human approach and unable to predict Kale's next move. Queen Thalira watched in astonishment. The tattoo on Kale's back seemed to glow faintly in her memory, a symbol of the strength humans carried within. She realized that these were not random acts of skill. They were calculated, intelligent, and adaptive. Humans, she now understood, were not weak. They were formidable. Kale moved like a shadow through the chaos, coordinating his team, correcting mistakes, and exploiting openings. His human instincts guided him as much as his training. One alien soldier attempted a direct attack, only to be redirected by Kale's precise countermove. Another tried to flank, only to be funneled into a trap Kale had anticipated. The invaders faltered, their confidence breaking under tactics they could not predict. By the time reinforcements arrived, the breach had been contained. The invading force had suffered losses, and their morale was shattered. Kale's team emerged unscathed, efficient, and in control. The soldiers who had doubted him now looked at him with a mixture of respect and awe. The queen descended from her chamber, moving closer to the human who had altered her perception in a single day. "You are extraordinary," she said, her voice a mixture of disbelief and admiration. "Your people, they carry a strength I did not expect." Strength is not just in size or weapons. It is in the mind, the will, and the ability to adapt. Humans endure because we see possibilities where others see limits. Understanding it and applying it does. As the day ended, Kale returned to his quarters, muscles tired but mind alert. He reflected on the events, cataloging every success, every weakness observed, every lesson learned by the soldiers. Humans thrived not by conforming, but by adapting, improvising, and exploiting the unexpected. Today had been proof. Queen Thalira remained awake long into the night, thinking about the human who had changed her understanding of an entire species in mere hours. She had always believed in the superiority of her people, in their discipline, strategy, and power. Yet Kale had demonstrated something deeper. Humans were not easily categorized. They were clever, unpredictable, and capable of feats that defied conventional understanding. She could not deny it any longer. The tattoo on his back, a mark of ancient human warriors, had significance far beyond what she had imagined. Kale Anders was not merely a soldier. He was a symbol, a reminder that humanity's true strength had been underestimated for centuries. And as the stars began to twinkle above the alien city, one truth became clear to the queen. Humans were not to be dismissed. Underestimation could be fatal, and Kale had already proven that point. The hall, now quiet, seemed to hum with latent energy. Kale's influence was subtle but undeniable. He had not only taught the soldiers new techniques, but he had changed their perception of humans entirely. They would never see humans the same way again. And Kale, as always, was already planning the next step. He knew that the Empire had more challenges ahead, more factions to test, more perceptions to shift. Humans had survived, adapted, and thrived in every corner of history, and now, under his guidance, they would continue to do so in a galaxy that had forgotten their true strength. Queen Thalira gazed at the training hall from above one last time. The memory of the tattoo burned into her mind. She did not yet understand the full scope of its meaning, but she knew this. Kale Anders had awakened something long dormant. Humanity was no longer a footnote. They were a force to be reckoned with. The alarm blared across the crystalline city, a sharp, urgent sound that echoed through the streets and corridors. Kale Anders was already moving, alert before the sensors even finished reporting the breach. A rival faction had launched a coordinated attack, exploiting the Empire's boundaries, testing defenses they believed were fragile. They had expected the humans to falter, the soldiers to respond predictably. They had underestimated both. Kale gathered his small team of human and alien soldiers, his mind racing through possibilities. Numbers alone could not determine the outcome. Strategy, adaptability, and timing would be the deciding factors. Humans thrived where rules could be bent, where unpredictability ruled, and Kale intended to prove it. Queen Thalira watched from her chamber, her heart pounding. She had trusted Kale's judgment, but this was the first real test. The tattoo on his back seemed almost alive in her memory, a symbol of history and strength that warned her not to underestimate the humans standing before her empire. Kale moved quickly, assigning tasks to each member of his team. Humans would exploit flanking routes, strike where the enemy least expected, and coordinate with alien forces to create confusion. Alien soldiers were trained for precision, but Kale encouraged improvisation, quick thinking, and leveraging the environment in unconventional ways. The first wave of attackers arrived on the outskirts of the city. They were confident, armed with advanced weaponry and moving in formations designed to intimidate. Yet Kale had studied their movements, predicted their approach, and prepared countermeasures. The humans struck first, using terrain and shadows to their advantage. They set traps that funneled the attackers into narrow corridors where alien soldiers could assist in neutralizing them efficiently. Each movement was calculated, adaptive, and deliberately designed to surprise. The invaders faltered, their confidence wavering as they encountered tactics they had not anticipated. Kale led from the front, moving fluidly between positions. He dodged attacks, redirected opponents, and coordinated strikes with his team. Every step, every decision was precise. The aliens, trained for rigid strategy, struggled to respond to the fluidity of human tactics. The Queen watched in awe and apprehension. She could see the difference clearly now. Humans did not rely solely on strength or numbers. They used observation, anticipation, and adaptation. Every move Kale made was deliberate, every reaction calculated, yet seemingly effortless. Midway through the battle, a powerful enemy commander attempted a direct assault on the city's central tower. His forces were strong, disciplined, and deadly. Kale anticipated the move before it fully unfolded. He divided his team, using feints and distractions to isolate the commander from his support. Then, with precise timing, he led a human strike team to intercept him. The clash was brutal but controlled. Kale dodged a lethal blow, using momentum to redirect his opponent. Alien soldiers flanked strategically, guided by Kale's commands. Within moments, the enemy commander was disarmed, forced to retreat with the remnants of his forces. The invaders' morale shattered under the unexpected defeat. Queen Thalira's breath caught. She had trained for decades, studied strategy, and witnessed countless battles. Yet she had never seen a single human orchestrate an entire defense with such precision, intelligence, and courage. The tattoo on Kale's back, the symbol of ancient human warriors, seemed to burn brighter in her memory. It was a mark of legacy, endurance, and cunning. Kale did not pause. The battle was not yet over. He moved through the city with quiet efficiency, guiding soldiers, correcting errors, and exploiting weaknesses in the attackers' formations. Each engagement reinforced the lesson. Humans were not to be underestimated. Adaptation and intelligence could overcome numbers, skill, and technology. One group of enemy soldiers attempted to flank Kale's position through a narrow alley. They had expected hesitation, confusion, or fear. Instead, they encountered a coordinated trap. Humans moved silently, using environmental advantages, distractions, and calculated strikes to neutralize the threat. The attackers were disoriented, frustrated, and forced into retreat. Throughout the battle, Kale maintained control, not through intimidation or raw power, but through calm authority, observation, and ingenuity. Alien soldiers who had doubted him were now fully committed, following his guidance and witnessing the strength of human adaptability firsthand. Queen Thalira descended from her chamber to observe more closely. She could no longer deny the significance of the tattoo, the legacy it represented, and the human who carried it. Kale Anders was not merely a soldier. He was proof of an ancient truth. Humans, underestimated for centuries, possessed resilience, intelligence, and skill that rivaled any alien civilization. The final wave of invaders attempted a desperate assault on the city's main gates. Kale anticipated this, positioning his team strategically to exploit their desperation. Humans moved unpredictably, attacking from angles the enemy had not considered. Alien soldiers followed Kale's lead, adapting to his methods, creating a combined force that was efficient, coordinated, and deadly. Within minutes, the invaders were driven back, their forces fractured, morale broken, and strategy undone. Kale stood at the center of the battlefield, breathing steadily, surveying the aftermath. His team had executed every maneuver flawlessly, proving the power of adaptability, observation, and teamwork. Queen Thalira approached him, her eyes wide with admiration. "You have shown strength, courage, and intelligence beyond what I imagined possible," she said. "Your people, they are not to be dismissed. They are formidable." It was a symbol of human legacy, a mark of warriors who had shaped history and survived countless challenges. She realized that Kale was not just a soldier. He was a representation of humanity's enduring spirit. The city, once quiet and orderly, now hummed with renewed energy. Soldiers moved efficiently, inspired by Kale's example. The citizens, though unaware of the full battle, sensed the shift. Humans had proven their worth, their ingenuity, and their resilience. As night fell, Kale returned to his quarters, muscles exhausted but mind alert. He reflected on the day's events, cataloging every engagement, every decision, every adaptation. Humans thrived where rules could be bent, where strategy required intelligence and flexibility. Today had been a victory not just of combat, but of perception. Humans were no longer underestimated. Queen Thalira remained awake, contemplating the significance of the battle. The tattoo on Kale's back, once a curiosity, had become a symbol of respect, awe, and caution. She understood now that humans carried a legacy of strength, endurance, and adaptability that no one should ignore. Kale slept lightly, dreams filled with strategies, contingencies, and possibilities. He knew the Empire had seen only a fraction of what humans could do. The next challenge would be greater, but so would his preparation. Humans endured, adapted, and overcame, and Kale would continue to demonstrate this truth to the galaxy. The stars above the alien city twinkled in silent approval. Humans had proven their value, their cunning, and their resilience. And as the Queen considered the future, one certainty remained. Kale Anders and humanity itself could not be underestimated. The morning light spilled across the city in pale streaks, reflecting off the crystalline towers and casting long shadows across the streets. Kale Anders stood on a high balcony, surveying the calm after the storm. The city had survived the assault, its defenses intact, and the invaders had retreated, broken and disoriented. Yet Kale's mind was already turning to the next challenge. Victory was not just in winning battles. It was in shaping perception, in proving the value of humans in a galaxy that had long underestimated them. Queen Thalira appeared behind him, her steps quiet but deliberate. She had not slept, consumed by the events of the previous days. The tattoo on Kale's back had become a symbol in her mind, a reminder of humanity's hidden strength and legacy. She had witnessed firsthand the cunning, adaptability, and resilience that humans carried in their blood, and she could not ignore the truth any longer. "You have changed everything," she said softly, almost to herself. "I can no longer see your people as insignificant. Strength is not just measured in numbers or weapons. It is measured in will, in intelligence, and in the ability to overcome. Your tactics, your leadership, it is unlike anything we have seen. You have proven that humans are more than legends, they are reality." Alien soldiers who had doubted Kale now spoke of him with reverence. Civilians, hearing fragments of the story, began to see humans not as fragile outsiders, but as clever, resilient, and resourceful beings capable of extraordinary feats. The perception of humanity was shifting, and Kale had orchestrated it with precision. Queen Thalira led Kale to the central chamber, a vast space filled with the Empire's advisors, generals, and dignitaries. The atmosphere was tense, charged with anticipation. All eyes turned to Kale, the human who had single-handedly altered the perception of an entire civilization. "Today," the Queen began, her voice steady and commanding, "we honor those who have proven their worth. Among them stands a human, Lieutenant Kale Anders, whose skill, strategy, and courage have saved our city and inspired our people." Today, the truth was undeniable. Humans were clever, adaptable, and capable of feats that could rival any species in the galaxy. The Queen motioned to the assembled dignitaries. "The tattoo on Lieutenant Anders' back," she continued, "is a mark of an ancient lineage, a symbol of warriors and strategists who shaped history long before our records. It is a legacy that demands respect, and it is embodied in him." His team of humans and alien soldiers stood beside him, proof of cooperation, trust, and the success of adaptability over rigid tradition. Together, they had demonstrated that ingenuity, intelligence, and courage could triumph over force and expectation. One of the senior generals stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Your tactics were remarkable," he said. I have trained for decades, yet I have never witnessed such efficiency combined with creativity. Your people, they are not as fragile as we assumed. Humans will no longer be dismissed or underestimated. Their place among the stars is assured. The perception of humanity had shifted irrevocably, and Kale's presence had been the catalyst. In private, the Queen spoke again, her voice quieter, almost reflective. The tattoo you bear, it is more than a mark. It is a promise, a warning, a testament to your people's strength and endurance. A reminder that humans are not defined by size or strength alone. We are defined by our will, our intelligence, and our ability to endure. That is our legacy. As the day turned to evening, Kale and his team walked through the city, observing the repairs, the reorganization, and the cautious optimism of the citizens. Humans had shown their worth not through dominance or force, but through intelligence, adaptability, and courage. They had earned respect, and that respect would ripple outward through the galaxy. Queen Thalira followed at a respectful distance, still absorbing the reality of what had occurred. She realized that the perception of humans had shifted permanently. Where they had once been dismissed, they were now recognized as equals, or perhaps, in some ways, as a force to be reckoned with. Kale paused at the edge of a repaired plaza, looking out over the city. The battle was over, but the implications were just beginning. Humans had proven their capability, their ingenuity, and their courage. Now the Empire would have to recognize the truth. Humans were formidable, adaptable, and not to be underestimated. The Queen approached him once more. "You have not only saved the city," she said softly, "you have changed the way my people see humanity. That is a victory far greater than any battle. Tomorrow we will continue to show it." In the quiet moments, the Queen found herself staring at the tattoo again, at the mark of a legacy she had thought lost. It was a symbol of resilience, intelligence, and adaptability, the very qualities that had allowed humans to survive and thrive where others had failed. Kale, standing beside her, did not boast or celebrate. His presence alone was proof of what humans could achieve. The Empire had witnessed it, and the perception of humanity had changed forever. As the stars appeared above the alien city, Kale reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the first day of training to the breach to the final battle, humans had demonstrated their greatest strength, the ability to endure, adapt, and overcome. The galaxy would remember this day not just as a victory, but as the moment humanity reclaimed its place among the stars. Queen Thalira finally spoke, her voice firm and resolute. "The Empire recognizes your people. We respect your skill, your intelligence, and your legacy. Let it be known, humans are not to be underestimated." Respect had been earned not through arrogance, but through action, adaptability, and courage. Humans had shown what they could do, and the ripple of that demonstration would extend far beyond this city. The night deepened, and the city settled into a quiet calm. Kale Anders looked up at the stars, the weight of human history behind him, and the promise of the future ahead. Humanity had endured, adapted, and risen. They had proven their worth, and the galaxy would no longer forget. And somewhere in the depths of the Empire, the Queen traced the tattoo in her memory one last time, a symbol of respect, awe, and a recognition that humanity's true strength had finally been revealed. Humans were no longer underestimated.